Georgia Southern women's basketball this week finally got 2 games in. How about that?
You did play 2, that's
we
right.
We did.
Yeah.
I kind of got used to this 1 game a week thing, but
I'm not sure what that's like.
Yeah, I turned around Saturday. I was like, wait a minute, we got another one. Thursday fell 78-74 to the Texas State Bobcats on TikTok night.
How'd that go?
Very well.
Okay.
Very TikTok-ish. Are
you
you on TikTok?
No. I was going to ask you if you were in a TikTok.
I wasn't in a TikTok. My TikTok is just scrolling, looking at everything else. Which really, I think they call it a For You page. It's basically baseball umpires and then a couple radio people and then some just random dancing. I don't really know how all that gets calculated. Probably don't want to know how it gets calculated. But it was TikTok night. But fell 78-74 to the Texas State Bobcats. It was a game that Texas State led for pretty much the entirety of the game, where Georgia Southern got down 26-15 after the first quarter. Were able to battle back, and the second quarter was really good for Georgia Southern, outscored Texas State by 5, but just didn't feel like you could ever get over the hump of the first quarter. And when you got the momentum, Texas State got the momentum back in the tail end of the third quarter, and that was going to be all she wrote after the 78-74 victory for the Bobcats. Did have 3 Eagles in double figures. Taryn Ward had 23. Good to see her coming back. She had been on the COVID list. She had been on the concussion list. She had the COVID list in the middle of her concussion protocol. And so you got 2 protocols crashing into each other, which takes somebody a lot smarter than me, and thankfully Lane is. But Maya Burns with 11, Taya Gibson also in double figures with 10 points as well against Texas State.
And we talked with Brant Freeman last week. It was nice to finally get him on and actually get a chance to show everybody that he did join us. But one of the 2 that he talked about for Texas State was Denasia Hood, and she ends up with 30 points. So we knew that she was going to be an important factor, but to be able to do that almost single-handedly, giving the Bobcats the victory.
She is somebody that has mastered the mid-range jumper. And it's something you and I have talked about, that you don't see a whole lot of college athletes do the mid-range anymore.
That's why I love Kamari Brown.
She was all about it. She started 6 of 6 from the floor, and Chad Jackson said something to the effect of, well, she can't keep this up the whole time. And I told him to knock on some wood, and the next time down the floor, she missed a crazy layup. So I was like, thank you, Chad.
Go 15 feet further out.
Yeah.
Knocked one
Yeah,
out.
exactly. But they moved on to Saturday, and Georgia Southern knocking off the UT Arlington Mavericks 64-63. This was one of the crazier games to ever watch inside Hanner Fieldhouse. And I know that's a strong statement considering some of the games that we've seen.
Some of the games you've seen especially.
But both teams had a double-digit lead in the first half. And you talk about a back-and-forth game, and you're usually talking about, okay, first team up by 2, second team up by 2, back and forth that way.
Yeah.
This was more of, okay, a 13-0 run, then a 17-0 run the other way. And so many huge swings of momentum in this game, but luckily Georgia Southern able to come out with a victory 64-63 over UT Arlington. And this is a game, Coach Howard talked about it before, it was going to be one of the toughest, if not the toughest, teams that Georgia Southern faces all year. So much experience with this UT Arlington team. Krista Gerlich had this program so set up when she departed for Texas Tech a couple of years ago. Sharika Wright comes in and just keeps adding to the success that UT Arlington has had. But a really good UT Arlington team, and I think having their first weekend of 2 games apiece really caught up to them, especially doing it on the road. But at the end of the day, Georgia Southern splits the week in a 64-63 victory for Georgia Southern.
And it was probably necessary that the second quarter was as good for the Eagles as it was, because it came down to the last couple of seconds, and UTA's going in for a layup, which would have given them a 3-point lead, but Maya shows up, block out of bounds, and to get possession back, and then it's Hurd that's making the decisive free throws the next couple of seconds, forced the turnover on the final possession, and what could have been a loss becomes a win very rapidly, and a landmark victory early in conference play for Coach Howard.
Yeah, Maya Burns really needed this one, and Coach Howard talked about it. Maya's been struggling the last week or so on the floor, but really good to see her have a double-double, 23 points, 10 rebounds, 4 on the offensive glass. Did a really good job, set a career high with 4 threes made in this game. So a huge shout-out to Maya Burns and a huge part of this victory for Georgia Southern women's basketball. Women's basketball will have a 1-game week, just when we got used to this whole 2 games thing.
Till you got too cocky.
I know, right? But right when we got used to it, you go back to the whole scheduling, we'll call it a fiasco to play nice, but
it's all part of a larger plan that we don't know about.
Yeah. Men's basketball playing 18 conference games.
Yeah.
Women's basketball playing 16 conference games. This is where it all gets into it. The Georgia State weeks, you only play once. So this week, women's basketball will only play at Georgia State on Saturday, 11:30 a.m. So brunch with Chad and I for Georgia Southern women's basketball at Georgia State on Saturday. Next week, you'll be back to hopefully 2 games in a week. The following week, it'll only be Georgia State at home. So the beginning of February, you only have one game per week. And so this week, we'll head up to Georgia State in the third floor of the Georgia State Sports Arena for an 11:30 tip-off.
This is what we had grown accustomed to with that quote-unquote travel partner rivalry matchup. You got the whole week to get ready for them, and I loved it because there was natural build-up, especially when it's Georgia Southern and Georgia State. You need all that extra time to talk about the matchups, whether it's the men's or the women's side. But for the men this year, they're playing those two games in 3 days. That's what Coastal and App just did. Ironically, the two teams that are scheduled to come here this weekend to Hanner Fieldhouse. Coastal and App played in Conway on Saturday. They played in Boone on Thursday. Now they won't see each other for the rest of the year. And that's your supposed regional rival travel partner, however you want to phrase it.
And the crazy thing is, I thought this is the way that women's basketball was going to do it across the board. It just so happens this is the way. Now, there's most of them that have your travel partner on your one-game weeks. But like Texas State and UT Arlington, they play each other on a Thursday, Saturday, home and road, like men's basketball is doing with Georgia State.
And then they will February, I think.
And then Texas State and UT Arlington women's basketball play each other in 1 week, so they don't have the travel partner where they only play once.
Yeah.
The games that they only play once a week are like the Arkansas, where 1 week they'll go to Arkansas State, then 2 weeks later the only game they play is out to Little Rock.
And another way that they've made the 16 games work, some of these are split weekends. In the case of Georgia Southern, the Louisiana Ragin' Cajun women were in Mobile as part of that doubleheader, the split doubleheader. So the Cajuns played South first. That's why we were a little bit delayed on Saturday from the Mitchell Center.
How was Steve Peliquin?
Just wonderful. Had a Coca-Cola right in front of him. Saw
no
Josh,
water.
Absolutely not. Perish the thought of that. Not Paris, Louisiana. Anyway, Josh Bruner was there. Had a chance. I hadn't seen him in a while. So him and JT and I talked, and we were all wearing the same style long sleeve pullover.
Oh, fantastic!
The newer material.
Right.
We ended up getting with our logo on it.
Uh-huh.
All the same material. We didn't get a picture, so we can't document it. Sorry. But to get back to the original point, Louisiana was at home against Troy on Thursday, and they beat the Trojans, and then they had to come to Mobile. I believe that's about a 5-hour trip to be able to play for Saturday, and that's what Coastal and App just did, playing the one game in Boone Thursday, 5-hour trip to go to Conway for a Saturday afternoon game, and that went to overtime.
Ugh.
So that's just another set of nuances between the men's and the women's scheduling this year.
Ugh, no thank you.
But
okay.
Steve's great, Bruner's great, Cajuns came back and won. They were down early to South, but Cajuns ended up hitting a couple of threes late and ended up winning by 7.
So you got the scout for us.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, they can shoot.
Fantastic.
Good luck. They can shoot.
Fantastic.
They can shoot the 3-ball.
But this Georgia State game coming up on Saturday. Panthers 6-9, 0-3 in conference play. They had a little bit of COVID issues at the beginning of Sun Belt play when they were supposed to be playing Arkansas State and then Appalachian State. But Georgia State, it's a lot of the same names. Cameron Ziak is one of the best shooters in this league. Deasia Merrill, one of their tops, and then Ashley Foster, the senior out of McDonough, leading the way with 11 points a game. It's a team that has struggled at times throughout this season, but have played a really tough schedule, a lot like we talked about with Texas State coming in last week, a really tough schedule, and so you don't necessarily this early in conference play, and I say this early in conference play, we're 3 weeks into it, but you don't necessarily take the schedule really all that seriously. And it's Georgia Southern, Georgia State, so forget those schedules.
You're 3 weeks in, and Little Rock still hasn't played a game?
They finally did. They played last week.
Up until last week. So
correct.
the first 2 weekends, they were wiped out because of COVID. On the men's side, Georgia State's men have only played 2 games out of a possible 6. I think it's only 8 teams. I say only, but only 8 teams have played at least 4 games. So that means 4 teams, if they go by the 80%, would have to be reseeded if the tournament started today.
Women's basketball last week, going into last week, had 3 teams that had not played a game in conference play.
80%.
It's
See what happens.
crazy how that works.
Pensacola's coming up in about a month and a half.
And this was the week that you had no cancellations one day. You also had no cancellations all weekend on the women's side. So, that's a plus.
I'll take that as a positive.
Yeah,
for
no
sure.
kidding.
Yeah.